Можемо починати.
Шановні колеги, доброго дня.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We are glad to see you all online, remotely. Today, we are going to start a series of discussions. It is carried out by Ukrainian Institute together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, and we will speak about cultural diplomacy, why it is needed for Ukraine, where we are moving. And first from these discussions is dedicated to the strategy of the Ukrainian Institute. The Ukrainian Institute is the institution, the state institution, that implements cultural diplomacy in Ukraine, and we are going to speak about where we are heading during the next 5 years. So this is the series of discussion of the Ukrainian Institute and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Today we are in the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and we thank UCMC for support of these discussions. And I'm really glad to welcome our guests, Emine Dzheppar, the First Deputy Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dzheppar, and also our participants in studio, Volodymyr Yermolenko, General Director of the Ukrainian Institute, Tetyana, Filevska, Creative Director of the Ukrainian Institute, and Lilia, Mlynarych, Head of Supervisory Board of the Ukrainian Institute and the President of the festival, Koktebel Jazz. Greetings to you. So we have a lot of interesting speakers. I would like to stress that broadcasting of this presentation, of this discussion, is ongoing on Facebook pages of the Ukrainian Institute in 2 languages, so you may choose Ukrainian or English. Also, broadcasting is going through YouTube channel of UCMC, that's why you may ask questions there, and participants will be glad to answer these questions. I'm Volodymyr Yermolenko, Director, European Project, Internews, and I'm a journalist and a philosopher, and I have an honor to moderate this discussion. And I have an honor to give the floor to Emine Dzheppar, First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Thank you, Volodymyr, for moderation of this process. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I would like to greet our speakers, Vladimir, Tetyana, Lilia, Mlynarych. The efforts of her is difficult even to overassess concerning the Supervisory Board activity. This moment is really important not only for the ministry but also for the team of the Ukrainian Institute. I know for sure that a lot of forces, efforts and energy was invested in creation of this program document that is presented publicly today for the first time. The strategy of the Ukrainian Institute that outlines the actions of these institutions, and this is important for the ministry and for all Ukrainian society. This will be important for the next 5 years. I would like to say that for the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, in the documents envisage one of the main tasks is to form the positive image of Ukraine as a reliable partner. What is Ukraine? What is society? What challenges we face, the society and the state? This is all in this framework, and I hope that due to the efforts and with the participation of the Ukrainian Institute, it will be well articulated and well, because it happened so that starting 2014, this request for Ukraine as a brand is really high. And for the last 5 years, I've visited many countries, and people have different perception about Ukraine, and the strategy and its implementation will allow us to direct more clear and provide more clear understanding what our country is, how we see it, not how it may be presented by others. Unfortunately, we have hybrid war that is carried out by the Russian Federation today. This is not only a physical war that is in Donbass, but also this is the elements of soft power as the implementation of the hybrid war in order to form their own narratives in relation to Ukraine. I would like to say that systemic work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to form public diplomacy as an area of work, it started starting 2015, and today's Minister Dmitry Kuleba. This is one of the main priorities for him now, because practically this area was started by him. And now at the level of the minister, we have big interest to this area of work. And we believe that soft power, especially in today's world, where we only follow those slides that form perception, these headlines, the dynamics is so of the process is so high, and political situations and social situation is so quickly changes that we should have more than creative instruments how to work in this situation that is quickly changing. And I believe that the Ukrainian Institute is a very good instrument, element of soft power to implement the task. And the ministry should become a main beneficiary of the product that will be produced by the Ukrainian Institute, and this is very important concerning the formation of our task. And I believe that here the main ground for success, and as a head of this direction in the ministry, I believe that this is the most important synergy of cooperation between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ukrainian Institute. And I believe that we've established such cooperation with our colleagues from the Ukrainian Institute, and now we are going to continue. And we have some events that we plan, and this will be practical implementation of the document we present today. With great respect to your work and the efforts you contributed, I would like to stress the importance of this work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and wish success to you and to all of us. Thank you very much, Emine. You made really important focuses from the side of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I believe that Ukraine is the country that constantly complain that they do not hear us, they do not understand us properly, but at the same time, we didn't do much during the years of independence, and I'm really glad that this discussion is on the 30th anniversary of the Declaration of State Sovereignty that happened in 1999. And the strategy of Ukrainian Institute. So we are going to discuss this topic with the head of this institution about the strategy of the institution, that is the voice of Ukraine outside, the face of Ukraine outside, and we are going to speak about some abstract high things, but for our audience I would like to stress that the Ukrainian Institute is working in practice. This is not like strategy and then there will be activity. We have activity, but we should understand where we should move strategically. Volodymyr Sheiko, General Director of the Ukrainian Institute, and Tetyana Filevska, Creative Director of the Ukrainian Institute. Welcome, you're given the floor. Please, you're going to present this strategy.
Thank you. I would like to greet our viewers. Thank you for this high estimation and assessment of our work and about these good words about the synergy between us and the ministry. We would like to present the documents which we have been developing for 2 years, a long time, and this document continues this trend which started from Maidan Revolution. Every institution needs some roadmap which will explain how this institution will work, what this institution is and what it is not, what tools it will use to achieve ambitious goals. We have started development of our strategy in August 2018 when we were established. This was an inclusive process, a participatory process. We are not the only one stakeholder in this cultural diplomacy domain. There are many stakeholders, both institutions and individuals, who are working in this domain in public and civil society sectors. And we engaged a lot of stakeholders, a lot of actors to the development of our strategy. We had many consultations and discussions and trips, and we used other tools to get feedback, which allowed us to improve our document so that it is informative and comprehensive. 1 year I studied, and the executive director, Maria Zadorozhna, studied at Kiev-Mogilyanska Business School, and our diploma project, our thesis, now lays the foundation to the strategic document we discussed today. Our action plan for 2020 is based on this strategy. We do not start from zero. And in our specific projects for this year, we already created them in terms of these strategic imperatives, imperative priorities, which we have already set. I would like to acknowledge say how grateful we are to our stakeholders who helped us there. Kiev-Mohyla Business School, the Embassy of the United States of America, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, and the Supervisory Board, and the Renaissance Foundation, UCMC. They are those institutions who joined us in this process of development of our strategy. And we would like to thank hundreds of people who contributed to creation of this document. We shall continue. I'm giving the floor to Tetyana Filevska. Thank you, Volodya. Thank you to everyone for this chance to present the fruit, the outcomes of our long efforts. We also did much of research. Ukrainian Institute is the first profile institute on cultural diplomacy in Ukraine. It was important for us, and we showed this in our strategy. We reflected this, the notion of cultural diplomacy, what it is. Cultural diplomacy as a notion, as a concept, as a practice has been used for 100 years maybe, but Ukraine should gain the pace. And while defining this notion of cultural diplomacy, we were to decide which of the models of cultural diplomacy, there are several of them in international practices, which one we will choose, which one we will apply in our Ukrainian Institute activities so that we work most efficiently in Ukrainian context. Often talking about cultural diplomacy, we speak about soft power, about image, about brand, public diplomacy, strategic communication, and for us it was important to explain in the document that cultural diplomacy, of course, is a soft power essential tool, but it is also a tool of public diplomacy. And of course, cultural diplomacy has impact on creating Ukrainian brand, the brand of our country, and it is beyond this. Strategic communication is a wider notion. I will now not explain how all these concepts are interconnected, but the place of cultural diplomacy is among all these concepts. Cultural diplomacy, of course, is of influence, on formation of the image of the country, but not only culture is the main in the brand of the country. Other factors also are important, and so we need synergy so that we create the image of Ukraine, not only in terms of cultural diplomacy, but also in terms of economy, in terms of tourism. We should use all available instruments in detail, and analysis of cultural diplomacy models we present in our strategy. We have analyzed the concepts, dozens of concepts, for example, the one of Goethe Institute, the one of Lithuanian Cultural Institute, and the experience of Confucius Institute of China. This experience is quite different to ours, but we have analyzed these concepts, and we took what is efficient, what can efficiently work in Ukraine. The central element in the strategy, the statement, is the mission, the vision, and the strategic objectives of the Ukrainian Institute, which we articulated through long and fruitful debates. I will read them to you out. And our long-term goal, this is an ambitious statement. This is for long term. The mission is to strengthen the subjectivity of Ukraine as a country. This subject of Ukraine is subjectivity of Ukraine is important. This is. Yep. This we should articulate our voice to those in the context of post-colonial experience of Ukraine, and the need for us to gain this voice and to strengthen this voice. I think that now Ukraine is talked about. Without the participation of Ukraine, we are not a failed state, and we should promote this idea. We are not beggars, we are not victims, we should be an equal partner, and we should stand to this position. We have many interesting things to make the world interested in. This is cross-cutting in our strategy as a priority in our programmatic lines and specific projects, talking about vision. Our vision is how we wanted that Ukrainian Institute looks like after 10 or 15 years, and we articulated so that Ukrainian Institute is an expert, sustainable institution which can represent Ukraine via cultural potential. We are not the only one stakeholder in this domain, but we want to give this efforts in cultural diplomacy field to be more focused and more goal-oriented. You see now the goals on the screen. As Volodya has already said, something on the abstract level, but any institution has its objectives. I would like to comment on them briefly. There are 5 dimensions. The first is our wish to provide information to international audience about Ukraine, about what is Ukraine today, so that we can influence on this international audience. We would like to work with professional audiences, with institutions, experts, circles at the institutional level, because on the institutional level the sustainability is built, and the engagement of experts for Ukraine, which has only fragmented connections with outside world, it is principal thing. Strengthening capability of Ukrainian culture, education, science, and civil society actors in international cooperation. Many institutions had no experience in cultural diplomacy, or they have no skills of language, no English language skills, and no project skills, project writing skills. So we want to give them independent role so that they can present Ukraine abroad. The fourth item is to achieve sustainable representation of Ukraine in the world's cultural processes, cultural platforms, where this synergy, this communication, this cooperation takes place. And when there is no Ukraine there, this sometimes says more than when we are present. Now we have in active dialogue with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, so that presentation of Ukraine is ensured at all international events in cultural domain. One of our goals is also to expand the space of Ukrainian language, where Ukrainian language is used in the world. This is one of our strategic lines also. I would like to say that we have high priorities which then are divided into sub-objectives, which Nina will tell us about. Our goals is what we want to achieve, our program objectives, they are, let's say, our sub goals. The first dimension, the first line is the arts program, creative programs. In this line we implement various movies and artistic projects. Cross-sectoral programs cover arts and related activities, such as scientific events or multi-level programs which contain several components. The third line is academic programs. We support the Ukrainian studies in the world. We support the departments in universities which have Ukrainian studies. Civil society is the next line here. We talk about Ukrainian experience in building civil society, new political nation. In this line, it is important for us to cover the topic of Crimea. We are working much, putting much efforts, and are going to organize some events on this topic soon. Ukrainian language is spread in the world, is our separate line in activities. We are talking here about specific tools. The most expected are possibilities to get certificates in Ukrainian language skills abroad. This line is now much worked on by us, but we should not only issue books. In the Ministry of Education there is a commission on standards of Ukrainian language, and we are now going to sign a memorandum of cooperation with the ministry on Ukrainian language courses. As a flagship institution in cultural diplomacy, we are the first who state this function. For us, it is important to develop cultural diplomacy as a subject and as a profession, and we want to legislate the cultural diplomacy as a line where Ukraine can become a flagship internationally, at least in the region. The next line is research and analysis. We have some research which help us to be more efficient in our activities and project writing. The other research are research into perception of Ukraine all over the world. And now we launch and we carry out already such research. Thank you, Tetyana. The next slide should tell us for whom we work, who is our target audience. We can see not very good as small letters on our screen. There are many stakeholders in Ukraine and abroad. The system is wide, our target audience is wide. We are focused on a wide audience abroad to shape opinions about Ukraine among them, but we work thanks to the taxpayers. That is why we should present information about education, about science. We should help diplomats. But we work also for the sake of Ukrainian institutions who are our stakeholders by default, with whom we can create together some cultural products, or with whom we can work, who are subjects who contribute to our research. Several theses, partnerships are strategic basis of our program, of our communication and research works. This is a factor underlying all our activities. Every event which we hold in Ukraine and abroad, we create these events, we carry out them together with other institutions from Ukraine and from other countries. So the contribution of our partners creates synergy and help both us and our partners to achieve our goals. The geography of our activities, we are often asked about this, why we work in one country and we do not work in some other country, what are our future plans. So this geography is approved by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Of course, our geography of activities should be consistent with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs priorities. We should work with educational institutions, with scientific institutions. We worked in Euro-Atlantic vector before, after our establishment, but in compliance with the regional priorities of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. and because of understandability that we should extend our activities. You can see that our geography is now wider, but there will be priority countries, and also there will be class of important countries where our activities are important and where it should be maintained. The new regions for our work will be Asia and East. On this slide, you can see we should answer the second question, whether we have any affiliations abroad. This is an important question for us. Availability or lack of affiliates do not interfere with conducting our work abroad, but representative offices are really needed so that our activities are influential. During this 1.5 years, we have analyzed a lot of examples of other institutions and the legislative framework of Ukraine, and we decided on 4 potential formats for our representative office existence: from a full-fledged unit with its own independent budget, which is consistent with the jurisdiction where this office is located. The second model is franchising, or there could be hired institutions. For any of these models to be implemented, several prerequisites are important. This is a 3-year budgeting and planning and positive dynamics in funding of the institution, because there is no sense to put money into this process, into this long-term process, if these affiliates will not have money to maintain their activities in future. So they should have legislative framework, they should have staffing, how they will get funding, how they will report on their activities, because very many things to be changed so far, so that these models become working. We shall start maybe pilot project, pilot affiliate in Poland, where we shall test our affiliate activities, and then we shall extend this experience. So this is the end of our formal part of presentation. The strategy is a 50-page document where we cover not only these issues which we have mentioned to date, but it also talks about risk management, about our efficiency, performance efficiency indicators and monitoring, how we will achieve our strategic goals. A large chapter about background, about history of cultural diplomacy, details of our projects, and communicative framework of our strategy. This is quite a comprehensive document, and you are welcome to read it at the website of Ukrainian Institute. Thank you very much.
So you advertise the strategy. It looks like it is an interesting non-fiction and everyone wants to read it. So it was an impression you gave us. I would like to provide the opportunities to ask questions, but it will be later. Now I would like to give the floor to the head of the Supervisory Board, Lilia Mlynarych. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really proud how the Ukrainian Institute develops. Once again, I would like to thank Dmytro Kuleba. And I remember that in 1916, the idea appeared to create the Ukrainian Institute. For me, it is a pleasure that during the last years, several independent, bright, and modern institutions appeared that deal with Ukrainian culture, that develop image of Ukraine, promote image of Ukraine, and how it is presented in the world. And maybe I'm biased, but I believe that cultural projects may change the image of Ukraine, and they change the image of Ukraine. We have such practice. There was Year of Ukraine in Austria, and the Ukrainian Institute held this event really brightly, and we have interesting reviews from European press on this event, and we had several approaches to this document during the meetings of the Supervisory Board, and we had heated discussions about this document. The Ukrainian Institute formed the mission, vision, goals, and also the Institute wrote what it is and what it is not. It works transparently and provided the mechanisms in order to cooperate with NGOs, activists, civil society, and the whole cultural activists, separate projects. This is cross-sectoral and cross-cultural programs, and this is a real and clear sign where we should go. I really like the team of the Ukrainian Institute. I would like to thank them because this is an energetic team that has a proper vision where to go, and they have skills in project works, and this is a project institution. It has projects, promotes them, involves interesting projects and cultural practices, and may share with others. And we thank for this. And I'm really glad that the topic of Crimea is raised by the Ukrainian Institute. This is a painful topic. I remember a really interesting project. For us, it was really difficult. This is Koktebel Jazz 2017. We saw for the first time that this format, 153 countries watched this format. We said that Crimea is Ukraine, and we show why we believe so by these creative projects. We create bridges between Crimea and Ukraine. So I wish all the best and good results. Thank you, Lilia. I have a difficult role. I also want to provide some compliments, but I'm a moderator and I need to ask difficult questions for you to find answers. My first question, why do you need this strategy? The world is changing, everything changes. Today we have COVID, next we'll have some flu. You should adapt constantly. You need to have flexibility in order to provide finances here and there. Then Confucius Institute will come and say, let's make a good project in China. And you will say, we have a strategy. And they just go away. Why do you need this strategy? Thank you, Volodymyr. The same question was provided by Jerzy, former director of the Polish Institute in Kiev. He was one of those who provided the comments for the strategy. He raised this issue. So in this post-COVID or even COVID times, how would you provide for the how do you provide the relevance for the strategy? But we believe that our strategy is the framework in order to reach far-reaching goals, and this is not restrictive concerning how to reach the goal, by what projects and activities. And I believe that the world pandemic, and this year we cancelled 80% of our projects that we've planned, and in a month we made New Year plan and started to implement it. And this is the evidence that the strategy works, because we adhered to our strategy vision and and we just changed the way how we implemented the strategy. So this is the force of these strategic documents that appear in these Ukrainian institutions, and they help to overcome political and economic difficulties, healthcare problems that we have in the world, and they help us to preserve the direction. And we should make steps in our work, we should compare ourselves, and we should continue. So this is about philosophy, and if we are speaking about practice, we have a risk management section in our strategy, and we provide all necessary information there. And this is said by philosopher. So start reading from risk management section. We have questions from the audience. I would like to ask about geography. If I remember how it was submitted, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Dmytro Klimkin, the previous minister, they promoted this institution, and there was a vision that there will be affiliates. They planned Warsaw, Paris, Berlin, Rome, and you do not know whether we'll have them. What is your strategy concerning geographic area? So, for example, the events concerning the year of Ukraine in some countries, and what are the priority countries? Thank you for this question. The affiliates, this is not goal in itself. We may work with them or without them. Maybe there may be some permanent representative offices. Would be easier to work with them and more systemic. If we are speaking about geography and for 2021, these new countries for us, starting next year, Japan, Turkey, and Qatar. So we coordinated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and practical work is being done. We speak with institutions and embassies here in Ukraine, with people who have experience of implementation of projects or working in these countries, Ukrainian diaspora. We are trying to understand what is the field opportunities the Ukrainian Institute may join and use for its benefit. Affiliates are not needed now. This is preparatory work. It should be done beforehand, and I believe that in the future we will have visits in order to establish contacts and to communicate with the broad circle of people who will help us to carry out this activity adequately. In prospect, I understand that now there is a situation of uncertainty concerning budgets, international mobility, and our political priorities. But I wouldn't say that this is a direct risk to our work concerning geographic scope. I believe that we've done our homework concerning in what form these affiliates may exist, and our task, the task of the ministry, is to create conditions in order to establish such affiliates and to provide the resources for them. Then we'll be ready to the step. Thank you very much. I believe that the issue of the countries is very important. There are many countries, and you do not have a lot of people. About countries, the question. What are the plans about France? And second question about Japan, from the second secretary, Ms. Udovik. Do you plan to hold events concerning Ukraine in Tokyo in 2021 during the Olympic Games, and about coordination with the embassy? And do you plan to open office of the Ukrainian Institute in Japan. So Volodymyr answered about presentation about activity in France and Japan. France was and remains our priority country. We had experience of implementation there, and in the future we will continue. We have sustainable partnerships with the Cannes Film Festival. Despite pandemic, we held successful professional events for Ukrainian experts in cinema, and we will continue to do this in different areas of our activity. About Japan, we plan next year, we are going to start activities. We collected ideas, thoughts and proposals, and until the Olympic Games, we would like to have a number of projects. Recently, we had a meeting with our future ambassador, Sergei, who now heads the Diplomatic Academy, and he supports our ideas. And when he comes to the country, we will work in this direction. Also, we met with the representatives of Japanese embassy, and we found common grounds with Japanese counterparts, and those topic of partnership that will be the most beneficial for us. So our activity, the activity of the Ukrainian Institute, will always be coordinated with our foreign diplomatic institutions. In a week, maybe a little bit more, we would like to send some package of information to all the embassies and consulates and the representative offices. This will be strategy, our report 2019 and our plan for 2020. And those countries where we plan our activity, we will communicate with our colleagues from foreign diplomatic institutions, because they accumulate experience, and our cooperation here is natural and needed. The last question about geography. We are speaking about big countries, but what about Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Belarus? You've mentioned Turkey. So building some neighborhood relations, the cultural identity of the Eastern Europe. It's not a simple choice. So this geography, these countries, you know that they took a lot of energy. There are some small countries, there are a lot of small countries in the region. So we should, and we made this choice. We spoke a lot with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We understood that this should be our joint decision, and we should understand that our capability and our bilateral relationship, maybe we should start from scratch, or we may start with some higher grounds. And we may have some active Ukrainian communities in some countries, and they are stakeholders of the Ukrainian Institute. So we have the geography that we voiced, and this list may expand, it may increase. We are ready to work with other countries and to have projects in other countries. So we are not limited to these countries, and any strategy is a live document, and it has a right to develop in time and to take into account the experience of practical implementation that I hope we will get in the future. But this choice was not easy, and I believe that not all will be satisfied with it. I would like to add that neighboring countries, we worked in Poland, We will continue with Hungary, and recently we'll have, and in the future, nearest future, we will have Lithuania. So this is about 5 years, and then there will be different geography maybe. We will expand our geographic scope, and we hope that we will increase the capability of the institute, and we will be able to cover more countries. You cannot start from everywhere. You should start from somewhere. To start in some localities and then expand. I would like to add one more thing. In the framework of our activity in the sphere of cultural diplomacy, we plan a big event in cultural diplomacy that we want to propose to the whole region, and we developed a model how to involve all the countries of the Eastern Partnership to build cultural diplomacy in the European area as the leaders of this movement. So we play this role, and we should prioritize. As Eastern Partnership is really important. Ukraine is a natural leader in Eastern Partnership. So the question about affiliates. Do you plan to open an office in Poland? But I believe you answered this question. I would like to briefly comment that we had and we have good support of Andrzej Sheiko, the ambassador in Poland, and Poland is maybe the only country where Ukraine owns the premise, and it was repaired for the needs of the embassy and for the consulate, and in the nearest future maybe it will be good for the Ukrainian Institute. We even visited and looked at this premise, and we have support of the ambassador, and a lot will depend on the capabilities of the ministry and the institute to implement this project, but this is a big dream to implement it. Thank you very much. So we have about 7 minutes, and you may ask questions through the chat. We will voice them because the moderator exhausted his difficult questions. No, I have one question. We spoke about stakeholders. As I understand, you cannot provide grants to announce contests. We have diaspora organizations, for example, they want to collect money from elsewhere, and they may provide some money for the days of culture in some European or American city. Or some Ukrainian organizations, they have their projects. Maybe they have partially some finances. Do you have cooperation with such institutions? I believe that there are two different answers for this. First, this is grant as the instrument of financing. Now the Ukrainian Institute cannot, in accordance with current legislation, to directly provide grants to other organizations. This can be done only by several institutions in Ukraine, and I believe that this will change because the law was adopted 3377 and 33. So in some time, this will allow to use these instruments. And about the contests, we hold these contests, and we work with a lot of projects. We select participants in a transparent and honest way with the participation of jury among the Ukrainian Institute experts and also outside experts. And in this way, our activity becomes more transparent. And we do this. About the second part of your question about Ukrainians who live abroad and foreign Ukrainian institutions who have many initiatives, we cooperate with them in 2019. We did it actively, and here we should understand the responsibilities of the Institute and the Ministry, in the structure of which we will have a unit that is responsible for cooperation and humanitarian cooperation and connections with Ukraine who live outside Ukraine. And then the budget of this department, money is envisaged to finance the projects of Ukrainian diaspora, for example, Ukrainian language courses or other initiatives. And this is done on the cost-test grounds. And also, we should understand the competences and the limits in order not to go to the territory of other institutions. I believe that Vladimir provided comprehensive answer. So we do not have much time.
I'd like to tell about very important things which we have not talked about today and which usually are asked about. This is what country we present to the world, with which topics we work, and in which paradigms, in which ideologies we sustainable or permanent, which narratives we use. For ourselves, we provided quite well-grounded approaches, and how other similar institutions define or not define their topics, their scopes. This choice for many institutions is dictated with the topics of interest in the societies, and we have chosen the same way. We had several moderated sessions where we tried to fix, to get this nerve of society, these opinions among grassroots public, how they see the past, the present, and the future, and we have fixed this in as some range of questions. The past is our experience. This is both negative experience of trauma, our lives in totalitarian society, our traumatic and catastrophic experience such as Chernobyl catastrophe, which will be 35 years from now, next year, and this heritage we should rethink. What can we say in this context to the world, and what the world wants to say to us? And the present is the second framework. We focus on our experience in building civil society, in building democracy, which will start with formulation of new political nation, and those practices which Ukrainian society can share with the world, which we already gained. The third framework is future. This is visionary framework. We see Ukraine as a member of global community, and we want to be a part of global agenda, and we want to help addressing world's challenges such as environmental problems, which we already face now, but they are challenges which we will face more in future. I like this personally because you work with the past, but you do not make it archaic. You use it to work with the future. So working with Ukrainian identity, you try to have dialogue with the outside world. We have other questions, and so we can continue our dialogue. Let's answer these questions. They're about geography. Talking about United Arab Emirates and Qatar, what projects do you see as most promising? Olga Sagayda, the third secretary of the embassy in Kuwait. I would say in brief, because we are short of time. In a week, there will be the next discussion on this in this series, where we will talk together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Academy of Diplomacy and experts on foreign affairs about the cultural diplomacy in the context of regional priorities of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where we shall articulate answers to these questions, because I don't want to give so narrow definition to this topic, which is very important. I want to engage professionals so that at the next session, at the next our presentation next week, we cover this topic better. We have several ideas. We have already negotiated with the embassy in Qatar what projects we will launch there, but we will tell about this one week next week. What projects will be implemented this year and next year? Tell our audience what you have already achieved. What are your achievements? Maybe you know what I will be talking about. I can say about this because I was a producer of this project. When we had the year of Ukraine in Austria, we had a mega project. This is a picture. In the center of Vienna, there was a cross-sectoral project, the Ukrainian Night. This project covered both electronic music and the new media and video information. In the museum quarter in the center of Vienna, the whole day was dedicated to Ukraine. And in the scope of this project, we have created a new piece of arts. It was mapping, which was projected on the Leopold Museum in the museum quarter of Vienna. It was a kind of mosaic of 1960s. We plan to develop this mosaic topic, this heritage of Soviet times. We plan to remake this project in France next year, and this year we will do a small contribution to this project. This is my favorite project, I think. Volodymyr. I have many favorite projects. I cannot talk about only one. I would like to mention the program of support to Ukrainian studios of Rudnitsky, who is a Ukrainian origin, Canadian and American citizen. We are very glad to have the honor to give his name to the studios. Finally, we have launched this program, and this is an important message to the international institutions who study Ukraine as a subject and object, that for the first time, for the 30 years of independence, our government focused on historical and cultural studies in the wide humanitarian sense, which create Ukraine on the map of the world, which can present Ukraine in the university books as a country and at the museums, exhibitions and displays. This program is a niche program. It looks like a niche program, but it is expected to have a strong impact on Ukraine's image abroad. I'd like to thank because the team of Ukrainian Institute they have mastered this today's situation with COVID very efficiently. The Ukrainian music platform is being implemented. This platform will present Ukrainian music in a very modern manner, and I like that the team and the institute manager found the opportunity to present Ukrainian musicians in online showcases, which is also a chance for the world to listen to Ukrainian music. I know about these steps. Yes, we can talk about the achievements long time because the colleagues now have mentioned only 5% of their projects. They have really fantastic projects in music field, in visual arts field, which the institute have supported. Whether Ukrainian cultural organizations can apply to the Ukrainian Institute to become partners. We structure our activities so that all our events are within some of programs. This ensures that our action plan is not fragmented, because our events should be not the projects selected by chance. We made our program very structurized so that we communicate the message to our partners domestically and abroad, in which along which lines we will work. This does not mean that we will not consider other proposals, but sometimes when we are addressed with one idea, this idea can be modified into something interesting both for the institute and for the applicant. So I offer our viewer who has asked us this question to address us personally, to send us a request. Now, Oras Tarak from Turkey, from the embassy in Turkey, would like to thank us for this presentation, and they want to help and to contribute to the activities of the institution. Several days ago, when we were in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we met the ambassador of Ukraine in Turkey, who has already invited us to Ankara, and who invited us to work with the institutions in Turkey. So we are very glad and honored to accept this proposal if the ministry will let us go to Turkey during the pandemic time. How the pandemic will change your priorities? As we have already said, this strategy helps us to keep within our framework, and in spite of the pandemic which happened when we were developing our strategy, the strategy still has not changed much because our geography has not been modified due to the pandemic. Maybe long-term goals, risks which can be really complex, complicated, and they cannot anyway change our strategic priorities. Our target audience abroad has not changed. So online events, when they were planned as offline events in France, but they are now carried out online. Anyway, they are focused on the audience in France. I would like to thank you, our speakers, and we are giving the floor to Ms. Emine to give the final thesis. There are many achievements which institutions have. It was very interesting for me to hear what questions were asked from the embassies of Ukraine abroad. From these questions, we can see that this institution, Ukrainian Institute, is very relevant today because it can help to build the better image in Ukraine worldwide. Thank you very much to our speakers, Volodymyr Sheiko, General Director of Ukrainian Institute, Tetyana Filevska, Creative Director, Lilia Mlynarych, Head of the Supervisory Board, and we would like to thank our viewers, our audience. Thank you to Ukraine Crisis Media Center. This is the first discussion in the series. I'd like to remind you that in 1 week, we will have the discussion on regional priorities in cultural diplomacy with the representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And after 2 weeks, we will have the discussion on the synergy in cultural diplomacy efforts. So please follow our website and see and